Hello out there, and today we are taking a look and doing an overview of this Kershaw Vedder number 2460. And I've had this knife for about a week now, and was fortunate enough at work to have a lot of tasks that needed a knife, so I have gotten a good amount of use on this knife in the past week, and have developed a pretty good opinion of the knife so far. So we're going to talk about all the details and all the things that make this knife maybe just a little bit different from a number of other budget or imported Kershaws. And since we're talking about budget or imported Kershaws, let's do a size comparison while we talk about pricing. All right, so this Vedder is going to run right around $36, and here it is next to the Kershaw Pico, which is a like $20 knife, if that at this point. And then here's the Weston, which I think when I bought it was in like the $25 range. And we also have the Dividend. Here's the aluminum Dividend, which will be in the mid to high 30s as well. That's USA made though. And then we also have, do we have anything else? Oh, here's the Induction. Another 2017 Kershaw, also imported, also in like the mid $30 range. And what I'll say about that $30 range versus the knives in the 20s are, for this knife at least, you do see the difference in just the quality of the build, which is a really pleasant thing to be able to say. Because Kershaw has done a really good job of just adding on a few little extras that I'd like to be able to expect when I get an imported knife from them, but you just don't always see. So we'll get into all that in just a minute, but let's turn it over and start with the blade and cover all the basics. So what we have here is a cutting edge of right around 3¼ inches of 8CR 13 MOV, and it is flat ground and has just a really attractive blade shape. All right, for me, that was the first thing that jumped out at me. You know, when I saw this knife, I really liked the shape of the blade. Certainly the G10, which we'll talk about in just a second, but the blade shape was the number one thing for me because it's not quite like a Wharncliffe. It's certainly not a straight edge, but you know, a blade shape like this, an edge like this is going to be really easy to resharpen and maintain. You see, we do have a little bit of a choil for that, so that's always a positive. And then I really liked the angular lines of the spine. I'm trying to keep this knife focused, and I'm struggling a little bit with it. But yeah, just the angular, there we go. Just the angular dive down to the tip. Just very cool. So a good looking knife, nice wedge here. Just really impressed with that. The way that it cuts is very good. Really no drag. I'm pretty sure the coating will hold up fairly well, but I don't know, can't really say at this point yet, but I do like that blade shape. And then one of the first touches as we work our way back, as you can see, there is jimping on this knife. And it's not just for aesthetics. I mean, this is actually functional jimping. It's not as deep as I would prefer. You know, if it were deeper, maybe it would provide a little bit better grip, but you can lock in pretty nicely with it. So, I mean, it's good. It's good that it's there, and it's certainly very helpful for the ergonomics. And then as we work our way back, you know, to the scales and the frame, you know, as far as aesthetics go, it's just really attractive in my opinion. I love the way that the hammering runs from the G10 all the way onto the frame. So it's just a good looking knife. And then all of those aspects certainly add to the ergonomics as well. So this is a stainless steel frame lock. These are G10 overlays, but you could theoretically remove them and still have a functional knife. All right. What that means though is, since it is stainless steel and you can see how thick this frame is, you do have a pretty heavy knife. So let's close it up, take a look at it closed, and give it a quick weigh and get a feel for that. I feel like the batteries are about to die in this thing, but I think we'll be okay. So 4.65 ounces on this knife. And there are plenty of 4.65 ounce knives out there that feel a whole lot lighter than they are. For example, since it's right here, the Kershaw Flourish weighs 5½ ounces almost. And when it's open in your hands, it certainly feels pretty light. The Vedder, though, on the other hand, I feel that weight. It doesn't feel light in my hand. It's not overly heavy, and it's definitely not a detractor, but it doesn't feel, sometimes that weight just disappears when you open the knife and you get it in hand, if the knife is comfortable enough. And even though this knife is still very comfortable, I do feel that density, how dense the frame is. So there is that. But when we are talking about the frame and the scales, you do have, like I said, that very attractive transition from the scale to the frame, but every little bit of it adds to the comfort of the knife because none of this is slick. So every one of these little like pock marks, the hammering, whatever you want to call it, they're all points of contact that, help you get comfort when you're holding the knife. And for me, or anyone who's right-handed, actually, if you are holding this knife right-handed, this little cutout right here that allows you to see Kershaw, that provides a really good spot for one of your fingers to sit and actually also aids in the ergonomics, interestingly enough. Now, what this overlay does, though, is it does make the knife just a little bit thick. So let me bring a couple knives back in, and you can see, it's not anything too crazy. Here's the divot end. So you can see it's just noticeably thicker than the divot end. And here's a mini grip, a little bit thicker than that too, and so instead of having just that flat handle, the G10 provides that swell, so it does make it like thicker right here, even more so. Theoretically, and I am going to get out the screwdriver and do this on camera if I can, but theoretically you could remove this and use the knife just without the G10. Here's what it would look like. So you could do that. It would make the knife a little thinner. It wouldn't really make it any lighter. So I don't think that would be beneficial at all, but it is sort of interesting. Thought you might want to see the knife somewhat without that G10. So let me get this screwed back in real quick, and then we'll carry on. All right, and then you can also see we have a backspacer here. Another interesting design, just another interesting shape, and not a negative thing, but unique just in the design of it. And you still have a little bit of an open frame, but not quite flow through. And then with our pocket clips, we have 2-position, tip up only. So very deep carry though. So a nice clip here. And I guess lanyard would go right here if you wanted. And ergonomically, let's take a look, just focusing on that backspacer. You can see it isn't sharp, it isn't getting in the way whatsoever. So, so no issue with that, despite the fact that it is just a little bit different. So the ergos are good. The general design is good. Pocket clip is good. So overall, just pretty much impressed with the basics. But then there are a few touches that just make the knife even better for me. The G10 is definitely one of them. The jimping was one of them. Things that you don't necessarily see from import Kershaws. But there are a couple more things. One of them is the bronze washers. We're used to a lot of Teflon or plastic with imported knives. That shouldn't necessarily be the expectation, but that's what we get a lot. And Kershaw with this has a knife that's really snappy. Just snappy, very impressive, great action with it. And here's the USA-made dividend. And the action on the Vedder is just as good, if not better. I really like opening and closing this knife. You can see fit and finish. The centering is great. Flipper is really easy to use, and it just fires hard when it fires. So really good job on that. And then one other thing, and it's something that I don't know if I'm being nitpicky, but whenever we have speed safe knives or assisted opening knives, you always have to hide the spring and your torsion bar somewhere. And so it's got to be like between a liner and the frame, or between the liner lock and the frame, or just somewhere on the knife. So taking a look at a couple of knives, on this Kershaw Weston, which is a frame lock, you've got the torsion bar between the scale here and the rest of the frame. All right, that's pretty easy. And if you have a liner lock knife like the Flourish, you've got it between the liner and the scales. Piece of cake. But what a lot of budget knives from Kershaw do that are, excuse me while I hit the camera, but a lot of budget knives from Kershaw that are stainless steel frame locks, they just add a whole extra liner. So here's the Kershaw Pico. If you see right here where my forefinger is, you can see they added a whole liner, and between that liner and the frame is the speed safe mechanism. That's where it's all housed. And for me, that always just seems like overkill. Like, why would you have to add a whole liner the entire length of the knife? And you don't need to. And with this, maybe you can see right here, you can see that inset liner. That's what houses the speed safe. And I really like that touch. It always bothers me when I see a full liner that's completely unnecessary for the knife, when you could just house it and make it a little more sleek and a little more classy. Cut a little bit of more weight, because you don't need all that extra weight of the whole liner. The knife is strong enough. I mean, the Pico even is strong enough. It doesn't need that extra liner right there. And even if it is, just the same amount of thickness, it's still an extra piece, and I don't know, sort of an eyesore. Just always something that, I'm nitpicky about and just sort of bugged me. So the fact that this knife, goes the extra mile to make that an inset liner that the torsion bar is housed in, is just that little touch that really impresses me, and I like it a lot. It's those little things that make a difference, and it's those little things that when I buy a budget import knife for $36, those are the things I definitely want to see, so that I feel like I get value for them. And that's what I think about this knife. I think for $36, which is what they charge for, a number of their imported knives now, I actually see a ton of value with this one. And if you guys remember me talking about maybe the Pico, maybe the Weston, maybe, who knows, all of the budget knives from, oh gosh, here's one that's just sitting out. Another new for 2017 design right here. Anytime I'm talking about a Kershaw knife where I like the design, I always say, gosh, I wish they used better materials. I wish they used, a better steel or a better this or that. I would love to have a more high-end version of this design. I say it all the time, but with this knife, it doesn't need it. This knife is good as it is. And I mean, certainly I always like to get the best steel that I can and the best materials that I can. And if they did make a higher end version of this knife, would I be interested? Absolutely. But it's not something I'm looking for, because I'm satisfied with what I have in this package. And man, maybe this is the first time I've said that 100% about a Kershaw knife in a while. That like they really just did this knife well. It's not perfect, and it's not going to be for everybody. And you might be watching this video thinking it's hideous or it's ugly or you wish it had this or that. But what I'm saying is that I think for what this knife is, they don't need to do anything else with it. It's good. It's good. I like it the way that it is. I like the steel. I like the quality of every little piece that they put into it. They made a complete knife. And it doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means that, I don't know, I just think they did a good job overall. So, yeah, very happy with the Vedder. Definitely excited to keep using this and have this as a part of my collection. And I think when we're talking about 2017 imported Kershaws, this is going to be right up there with the best of them. It definitely is. And honestly, it might even be right up there with a non-imported Kershaw. It's that good. So, yeah, overall, really impressed. Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, though, let me know down below. If you have this knife or have an opinion on it just from watching the video, let me know, because I'd love to chat back and forth with you. But, yeah, take care, and I will talk with you soon. Have a good one.